On March 20th, 2026, Pavan Davuluri, president of Windows and Devices at Microsoft, published what became one of the most quoted blog posts in the recent history of Windows. The title was Our Commitment to Windows Quality. The content was, in every measurable way, an apology. Davuluri acknowledged that Windows 11 users had experienced numerous issues. He acknowledged that Microsoft had been too aggressive with AI integration. He pledged greater focus on reliability and stability. He said, and these are his exact words, "We are reducing unnecessary Copilot entry points, starting with apps like Snipping Tool, Photos, Widgets, and Notepad." He wrote that Microsoft would be, quote, more intentional about how and where Copilot integrates across Windows, focusing on experiences that are genuinely useful and well-crafted. He said Windows is as much yours as it is ours. The Windows community received this post with a level of cautious optimism that the previous 2 years of broken updates, forced AI features, start menu advertisements, and a screenshot, everything recall disaster had made scarce. Microsoft was backing off. The AI overload was ending. The promise was real. Then, on May 24th, 2026, 9 weeks after that promise, Microsoft began rolling out Copilot's 6th user interface redesign. Copilot returned to its original sidebar format, this time with the ability to dock itself to either side of the screen and automatically resize every open application on your desktop to make room for the AI panel. The applications on your screen did not move because you asked them to. They moved because Copilot decided it deserved the space. That is not scaling back. That is not being more intentional. That is the same pattern this script is about to document in full detail. Microsoft promises less AI. Microsoft delivers more AI. And the specific sequence of events from January 2026 to June 3rd, 2026, when Satya Nadella stood on stage at Build 2026 in San Francisco and declared that Windows is now the first truly agentic operating system, is the most complete account available of what that pattern looks like when you watch it unfold in real time. Start with what Microsoft said and when they said it, because the specific timeline matters more than the individual statements do. In late January 2026, Windows Central published the report that set the initial expectation. The headline was that Microsoft was reevaluating its AI strategy on Windows 11 and planning to scale back or remove certain unreasonable Copilot integrations. According to sources familiar with the matter, Microsoft had paused work on adding more Copilot buttons to built-in apps. The company was planning to streamline existing integrations. People familiar with the plans confirmed that Copilot would be removed from inbox apps like Notepad and Paint. The tech community's reaction to this news was revealing in what it said about how far the relationship between Microsoft and its user base had deteriorated. Windows Central editor Zach Bowden used the word "inshitify" to describe Microsoft's approach in the same report that announced the company was changing course. That word, which describes the specific process of a product degrading over time as the company that makes it prioritizes its own revenue extraction over the experience of the people using it, had been circulating in Windows forums and tech comment sections for months before it appeared in mainstream tech journalism. The nickname Microslop, coined in tech forums and spreading across social media throughout 2025, had already become established enough that Tech Power-Up's headline on March 21st, 2026, was Microsoft promises slew of Windows 11 changes in response to Microslop criticisms. When a company's own press coverage uses the nickname that its frustrated users invented for it, the relationship between the company and its customer base is in a specific place, not merely disappointed, openly contemptuous, and Microsoft's January 2026 announcement was explicitly a response to that contempt. Not a product vision statement, not an innovation announcement, a de-escalation attempt driven by user revolt. The history of how Windows 11 reached the Microslop moment requires specific documentation because understanding what Microsoft actually did between 2023 and 2026 is what makes the March 2026 promise significant and the May 2026 sidebar return infuriating. When Copilot was first introduced in Windows 11 in 2023, it lived as a sidebar integrated directly into the desktop environment. Users could click the Copilot button in the taskbar, and the assistant would appear as a panel alongside other apps. The reception was mixed. Some users found it occasionally useful. Many found it intrusive and irrelevant to their actual workflows. Microsoft heard the feedback and made a change. They converted Copilot from a sidebar into a standalone floating application, giving it its own window that users could move and minimize like any other program. That was iteration 2. Then Microsoft decided the standalone app needed deeper integration and converted it into an edge-based wrapper, meaning Copilot was now essentially a browser window dressed up as an AI assistant, loading web content from Microsoft servers rather than running as native Windows software. That was iteration 3. Meanwhile, throughout 2024 and 2025, Microsoft was adding Copilot buttons to almost every built-in Windows application. File Explorer got a Copilot button. The Snipping Tool got a Copilot button. Paint got a Copilot button. Notepad got a Copilot button. Photos got a Copilot button. Widgets got a Copilot button. The strategy, if it can be called that, was to make Copilot inescapable by placing it everywhere, on the theory that if enough users encountered the button enough times, the AI adoption numbers would increase. What actually increased was the anger. Users who had been tolerating the AI push as an annoying feature they could ignore reported that the Copilot button proliferation crossed into something different. Every app they opened had a prominent AI button that they did not want and had not asked for. The computer felt less like a tool they owned and more like a product page for Microsoft's subscription services. That is when the word "inshitify" moved from tech forums into mainstream coverage. And that is when Microsoft published the March 20th apology. Pavan Davuluri acknowledged the pain points users experienced, admitting the OS went off track with aggressive AI expansion while basic stability issues persisted, went off track. That admission from the president of Windows and Devices is the specific corporate language for "we made a mistake," and our users told us loudly enough that we could not ignore it. The 2025 update failures that preceded the admission were the specific context that made the admission necessary. Microsoft's update track record in 2025 was genuinely damaging to the company's relationship with its enterprise and consumer user bases. The October 2025 update broke localhost connections, forcing users to revert. The same month, a Windows 11 update caused NVIDIA graphics cards to lose significant gaming performance, requiring an emergency NVIDIA driver to undo the damage. Earlier in the year, an update introduced bugs severe enough that Microsoft had to acknowledge them publicly. The string of failures was not isolated incidents. It was a pattern that security professionals, IT administrators, and ordinary users began incorporating into their risk calculations about whether updating Windows on schedule was safer than delaying and waiting to see what broke. Microsoft forced updates on users who could not turn them off. Those forced updates repeatedly broke things. And while Microsoft was forcing broken updates, it was simultaneously adding Copilot buttons to Notepad. The combination was what produced Microslop as the community's settled verdict on Windows 11's direction. The March 20th blog post was Microsoft acknowledging that verdict was correct. Windows K2 is an ongoing initiative designed to address major pain points across Windows 11 based on customer feedback, including reducing where Copilot and other AI integrations appear across the operating system, and apps like Notepad. Windows K2 is the internal project name for the effort that Davuluri's March blog post described publicly. The specific commitments the project made to users were concrete enough to be tracked. Copilot buttons removed from Snipping Tool. Copilot buttons removed from Photos. Copilot buttons removed from Widgets. The Copilot icon removed from the taskbar by default on new devices, and clean installs with an update that began rolling out on March 10th, 2026 through the KB553-602 cumulative update. The taskbar repositioning feature that Microsoft removed in 2021, the ability to move the taskbar to the top or sides of the screen, restored. File Explorer optimized for faster launch times. Windows Update redesigned to give users more control over restart timing, consolidating forced reboots to once a month. These were not vague promises. They were specific measurable commitments attached to a named internal project with a stated goal of having Windows 11 in a much better state by the end of 2026 and early 2027. The tech community watched the K2 commitments being executed. The Copilot buttons came out of Snipping Tool and Photos. The taskbar repositioning appeared in insider builds. The mood in Windows forums shifted from contempt to something closer to cautious observation. Microsoft was doing what it said it would do. The relationship was repairable. And then the sidebar came back. The May 2026 Copilot sidebar return is the specific event whose timing tells you everything you need to know about the sincerity of the March promises relative to the permanence of the AI integration strategy that the March promises were attempting to temporarily manage. On May 24th, Windows Latest reported a new Copilot update beginning to roll out that restored the docked sidebar layout. Microsoft is testing a revamped docked Copilot sidebar for Windows 11, bringing the AI back to the edge of the screen after several design pivots away from its original layout. This marks the AI assistant's sixth UI redesign. The same assistant that was removed from the sidebar in response to user backlash, converted to a standalone app, converted to an edge wrapper, promised to be made less intrusive, had its buttons removed from apps where users did not want it, was now being redesigned back into the sidebar it had originally occupied in 2023. The docking behavior was the specific design detail whose arrival, immediately after the K2 promises, was most difficult to reconcile with those promises. When Copilot docks to the side of your screen, it automatically resizes every open application to make room for itself. The applications on your desktop are shifted without your request, because an AI panel has decided to appear. This essentially communicates priority even if Microsoft calls it optional. A docked assistant that resizes the workspace says Copilot is not merely something you install or ignore. It is something the desktop is prepared to accommodate. Calling this optional, in the technical sense that users can close it, does not change what its presence on the desktop communicates about whose priorities the operating system was designed around. A workspace that automatically rearranges itself for an AI assistant is a workspace that treats the AI as the primary inhabitant and the user as a secondary consideration. That is the opposite of the workspace you own that Microsoft was describing in the March 20th post, when Davuluri wrote that Windows is as much yours as it is ours. The deleted tweet is the single most revealing piece of documentation available about what Microsoft actually thinks about the gap between its public K2 commitments and its actual AI strategy. Earlier in May 2026, Xbox leadership announced a restructuring, and in the cascade of statements that followed, Jacob Andreou, Microsoft's recently appointed executive vice president of Copilot, quote, reposted one of those announcements with a specific addition. He wrote, "It's critical that we remove Copilot from places where it doesn't live up to its promise." Shortly after posting it, Andreou deleted the tweet. The deletion is the relevant action, not the statement itself. The EVP of Copilot publicly confirmed what users had been saying for months. Copilot has been placed in positions where it does not work. The internal mandate to clean it up is real. And then he deleted the acknowledgement because the corporate optics of admitting that publicly were too damaging to leave standing. But the bell cannot be unrung. The EVP of Copilot said on the record that Copilot needs to be removed from places where it doesn't belong. He said it publicly. He deleted it quickly. The K2 project is removing Copilot buttons from Snipping Tool and Photos. The sidebar is returning to resize your desktop. Both things are happening simultaneously. The left hand is publicly cleaning up AI clutter, while the right hand is adding a new docking mechanism that makes Copilot a permanent fixture in the desktop's spatial layout. Build 2026 is where the complete picture becomes undeniable. On June 2nd, 2026, Satya Nadella stood on stage at Fort Mason Center in San Francisco and declared that Windows is entering its agentic era. At Build 2026, Microsoft unveiled an ambitious vision to embed AI agents across Windows, Copilot, and Azure, with Nadella declaring that Copilot evolves into a platform, not just a product. It's the first truly agentic operating system woven into Windows, Azure, and every Microsoft 365 app. The first truly agentic operating system. This is the company that 9 weeks earlier published a blog post saying it was being more intentional about how and where Copilot integrates across Windows. This is the company that launched Windows K2 to address the pain points that aggressive AI expansion, while basic stability issues persisted, had created. And the Build 2026 announcement is not a modest extension of the K2 moderation approach. It is the announcement that Windows 11 is becoming an AI agent platform at the operating system level, with a system-level service codenamed Orchestrator managing local and cloud-based agents, with users able to invoke agents with natural language from any text field, the taskbar, or a dedicated Copilot key. A new agent runtime built into Windows 11 version 25H2, the 2026 update. A Copilot agent SDK released to third-party developers so they can build agents that appear inside Copilot, Teams, Outlook, and the Windows taskbar. Leaked internal roadmaps suggest developers will gain full access to a Copilot SDK, enabling third-party actions that live inside the Copilot side panel, File Explorer, or even the taskbar. The March promise was we are removing unnecessary Copilot entry points from Snipping Tool and Notepad. The June announcement was we are building an agent SDK so that third-party developers can add Copilot integrated agents to File Explorer and the taskbar. The gap between those two statements is not a contradiction in the logical sense of one being false. Both are true. Microsoft is removing Copilot buttons from Notepad. Microsoft is simultaneously building the infrastructure that will embed AI agents more deeply into the operating system than any individual Copilot button in Notepad ever did. The buttons were visible and easy to remove. The Orchestrator is a system-level service. You cannot remove a system-level service from the Windows 11 settings menu. Mozilla has slammed Microsoft's Copilot tactics, saying AI was forced onto users. Mozilla, the nonprofit organization that builds Firefox, is not a company whose business model involves competing with Microsoft for AI subscription revenue. Their criticism of Microsoft's Copilot tactics is not competitive positioning. It is an institutional observation about the specific pattern of forcing an AI system onto users who did not request it as the default behavior of an operating system they paid for. The pattern Mozilla is describing is the same pattern the Windows community named Microslop, the same pattern that produced the Microslop hashtag trending on social media in early 2026. the same pattern that produced the K2 project as Microsoft's acknowledgement that the pattern needed to be addressed, and the same pattern that produced the Agentic Era declaration at Build 2026, 12 weeks after the acknowledgement, because Microsoft's business model requires the AI, the $30 per month Copilot Pro subscription, the enterprise Microsoft 365 Copilot licenses at $30 per user per month. The Agent 365 product that became generally available on May 1st, 2026 at $15 per user per month. The Microsoft 365 E7 Frontier Suite at $99 per user per month. This is the revenue architecture that Microsoft is building around Copilot, and Windows is the distribution channel that reaches over 1 billion installed machines. The K2 project removes Copilot buttons from Notepad because the buttons in Notepad were generating user anger without generating subscription conversions. They were all cost and no revenue. The Agentic OS architecture announced at Build 2026 is deeper, less visible, and more directly tied to the enterprise subscription licensing that Microsoft needs to justify its AI infrastructure investment to shareholders. The surface level cleanup is real. The strategic deepening is also real. Understanding both simultaneously is the specific thing that makes the title of this video accurate rather than simply provocative. The Windows 11 bugs that ran parallel to the AI integration push are the specific context that makes Microsoft's quality promise both understandable and fragile. In 2025, Windows 11 was plagued by severe update failures that affected users across consumer and enterprise environments. An update broke NVIDIA GPU performance, an update broke localhost connections, an update introduced file system bugs. The pattern of forced updates producing new problems was documented consistently enough that IT administrators began treating Windows Update as a risk management question rather than a security hygiene requirement. You were weighing the risk of not having a security patch against the risk of the patch introducing the specific class of regression that 2225's update track record had demonstrated was not hypothetical. Microsoft's response was K2, the quality commitment, the stability focus. And the specific aspect of K2 that is most likely to be genuine rather than performative is the infrastructure improvement that does not relate to AI at all. The taskbar repositioning is real. The File Explorer performance improvements are being tracked in insider builds. The update restart timing changes are documented. These are legitimate quality of life improvements that are not connected to Microsoft's AI revenue strategy. They cost Microsoft something to implement because they require engineering work on the parts of Windows that do not generate subscription revenue. The improvements exist. The motivation is genuine, and they are happening simultaneously with the Agentic OS declaration at Build 2026, the returning sidebar, and the orchestrator system-level service being built into Windows 11 version 25H2. The Ask Copilot taskbar feature is the specific convergence point where the surface-level K2 cleanup and the deep Agentic OS strategy meet in the place where they interact directly with your daily computer use. A newly published document confirmed that Microsoft's upcoming Ask Copilot feature for Windows 11's taskbar is arriving mid-2026. When enabled, the feature will see Copilot replace the taskbar's search box with a dynamic chat box that users can interact with at all times. The search box in your taskbar is the most used feature in Windows 11 by interaction volume. You open it when you need to find a file, when you need to launch an application, when you need to find a setting. It is the primary way most users navigate the Windows interface outside of clicking icons. In mid-2026, Microsoft is offering to replace it with an AI chat interface. The replacement is optional at launch. The feature is targeted primarily at commercial users with Microsoft 365 subscriptions. The search box will still be available. These qualifications are genuine. And they coexist with the specific history this script has documented. Copilot started as a button in the taskbar, then a sidebar, then a standalone app, then an edge wrapper, then had its buttons removed from apps, then had a new sidebar designed, then had an agent runtime built into the operating system, then had Ask Copilot positioned to replace the search box. The direction of travel across all of those iterations is consistent. Each iteration moves Copilot closer to the center of the Windows experience. Each cleanup of the most visible intrusions creates the perception of pullback while the deeper integration continues. Here is what you should do with this information. Not because Microsoft is making decisions you have no ability to affect, but because the specific settings that exist right now, before the orchestrator and the agent runtime are fully deployed, are the settings whose configuration determines how much of the Agentic OS infrastructure operates on your machine. Open settings. Go to Privacy and Security. Under Diagnostics and Feedback, set diagnostic data to required only and turn off tailored experiences. Turn off the advertising ID under Privacy and Security General. Go to Search Permissions and turn off Cloud Content Search under both Microsoft account and work or school account categories. Turn off search history on this device and clear existing history. Under Copilot settings, disable Microsoft usage data and use the separate delete all memory action to clear data already collected. That is 2 steps, and both are required. Then go to the group policy editor by pressing the Windows key plus R, typing gpedit, MSC, and pressing Enter. Navigate to User Configuration, Administrative Templates, Windows Components, Windows AI. Enable the Remove Microsoft Copilot app setting. This uses the policy framework that Microsoft built into Windows 11 version 25H2 with the April 2026 update, specifically to give enterprise administrators the ability to remove Copilot at scale. It works on Pro, Enterprise, and Education editions. After a system restart, Copilot is removed and the policy prevents updates from reinstalling it. For Windows Home users who do not have access to the group policy editor, the registry method creates the same policy manually. Open the registry editor by pressing the Windows key plus R and typing regedit. Navigate to HKEOS, Local Machine, Software, Policies, Microsoft. Create a new key called Windows AI if it does not exist. Inside that key, create a new doored value named Remove Microsoft Copilot App and set it to 1. Restart the computer. To prevent the taskbar search from being converted to Ask Copilot when it ships mid-2026, monitor your Windows Update settings and do not accept feature updates that include Ask Copilot before you have confirmed the feature has an off switch whose use does not disable normal search functionality. The history of Copilot UI changes makes it reasonable to assume that the feature will ship with controls and that those controls will be buried in settings that most users will not find without specifically looking for them. The build. 2026 declaration from Satya Nadella is the specific closing data point that makes the full picture visible. A demo at Build 2026 showed a user typing "Plan my trip to Tokyo next week, book flights under $800, create an itinerary, and share it with my team" into a Windows 11 text field, with an AI agent autonomously completing the multi-step task across multiple apps. That demonstration is genuinely impressive. A natural language request executed across multiple applications through an autonomous agent is the kind of capability that changes what a computer can do for you. The engineering behind it is real and significant, and it is also the specific vision that the March 20th quality commitment was navigating around rather than abandoning. Microsoft did not promise to stop building the Agentic OS. It promised to remove buttons from Notepad while building the Agentic OS. Those are compatible things. The buttons in Notepad were generating user anger. The orchestrator is generating enterprise subscription revenue. Microsoft is capable of doing both simultaneously because they serve different business objectives. The users who pushed back against Copilot buttons in Notepad got the K2 project. The shareholders who need AI revenue growth got the Agentic Era declaration at Build 2026. The question that Windows 11 users need to answer for themselves is which of those audiences Microsoft's operating system was designed for. And the answer that the 6 Copilot UI iterations, the March promise, the deleted EVP tweet, the returning sidebar, and the June 2nd Agentic OS declaration all provide together is both of them. Microsoft is cleaning up the surface-level AI intrusions that generated visible user revolt while building deeper AI infrastructure that generates enterprise subscription revenue, and that is harder to see, harder to remove, and harder to object to before the specific capability whose presence you are objecting to has already been built into the system-level services that run whether or not you have clicked the Copilot button that Microsoft removed from your Snipping Tool,